Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. My name is Juri Love. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are recording episode 157. Before I introduce my guest, I want to introduce my book, which is the same title of this podcast, A Gift from Adversity, which is available on Amazon. And then the title is A Gift from Adversity. And then you can put Juri, Jurilove on Amazon. And the subtitle of this book is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. After I published this book, I got a lot of messages from different places, and then people sharing their own adversities. And I felt really compelled to start a podcast, not only sharing the adversities, but the tools that people use to overcome, and then a gift that came from it. So I'm very grateful to have so many wonderful guests from all over the world. So let's invite today's guest. Hi, Jon. Thank you so much for coming to A Gift from Adversity today.
Hi, Jerry. I appreciate you having me.
Great. So before we get started, can you tell our audience your name, where you're coming in from today, and what you do, and if you have any social media or website that you want to shout out?
Sure. So my name's Jon Emery. I'm coming from Pennsylvania in the U.S., and I have a podcast called Life's Checkmark. It's people sharing their journey in life. And so you can check that out on Spotify, Apple, all of them, or you could just go to lifescheckmark.com too. And there you can find everything I do. So I have a coaching program for people to start a podcast. And then I also have a podcast community with about 34 other podcasters at the moment. So we're sharing ideas, encourage each other to keep growing. And I had a few special guests come in the past month. So that's what that community is all about. And I'm just one of those guys that has seen my podcast change my life and change others. And that's why I want people to not hesitate to build their own.
And then one more time, your podcast name.
Yeah, Life's Checkmark.
Life Checkmark. So please check it out and then listen and follow. So, Jon, let's dive into our first question, which is the adversity. So, can you tell our audience what was your adversity?
Yeah, so about this time, 4 or 5 years ago now, I lost my job after 20 years. And it wasn't due to COVID, but it was around the COVID times. They just weren't profiting, I guess. And so I was there for 20 years and I got to see this place grow. I got to grow as an individual and change things within the workforce that I was there, right? At first, I was kind of shocked. I didn't see it coming, right? And then I was in the logistics area, so shipping, receiving, the warehouse. And so they stopped production in October of that year. I think it was 2020, if I'm right. And to see like 60 guys just walk out the door was kind of shocking. So I wound up staying there till May of the following year because we had to make sure everything was stripped. Meaning it was like a shell. It went from a manufacturing company to a shell, and everything was down to just sweeping the floors. It was kind of crazy. So I was one of the last 3 to walk out the door. Kind of having an idea what I was going to do, not really sure. It was at that time I started looking at it as an opportunity. Things changed in my head, and I was going to pursue something else. Within the same year, the words divorce came to me. So if you want to look at it as a double whammy, as people say that to me sometimes, I got hit with 2 things in 1 year, life-changing events in a way, and I had to fight through that stuff. So I'd be open to sharing everything for how I navigated both, but those are the 2 big things that hit me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your adversity with us. Now, let's talk about job that you had 20 years. How did you get that job? And then what exactly were you doing? And then what was kind of expectation of dedicating 2 decades of your life?
Yeah, right. So I got out of high school. I went to college for about a semester. And then the semester thereafter, I started working full time and trying to go to college at the same time. And obviously, I fell in love with the money, I guess, right away. And, I gave up college and it wasn't really my thing. So it was like straight from 19, 20 years old. And I just stayed there. Had really no reason to leave. It just, and I kind of worked myself up. So, for me, I started like washing. It was a printing company. So we printed like your Hershey Kiss wrappers, like Dannon yogurt and stuff like that too. This is all, it was for food based labels. And so we would wash the parts for the machine so that they could go ahead and print new items. That way, they were metal, so we just kept on using the same parts. So I started there, and then slowly went into the area they called slitting. So they would just take a big roll, cut it down, and then I got to the point where it got me to the warehouse and shipping and receiving, scheduling trucks, having stuff come inbound and putting stuff away, doing all the paperwork processes and stuff, and then got to watch over a few people under me thereafter. And it allowed me to grow as a person and think I could keep on doing things that, I was able to see my pay go up. I was able to see uh, more vacation time and all that kind of stuff. So I really believe if they didn't close the doors, I probably would still be there. I was just like, this is my life in a sense. I would go to work, come home, take care of the kids, the wife, and then uh, the house and everything else. So it was, I always consider it. I always say it now. I was like in a mold. I was kind of confined to doing the same stuff over and over again every day.
So this was completely out of blue, or did you see it kind of coming?
The guys on the floor said, "Oh, things are coming up." I always was more optimistic and say no, you know, everything's okay. I don't see it coming. But they're like, "Oh, the writing's on the wall." And then when we had that one meeting when they started saying stuff, then that was pretty much, here we go. This is what it really was. I didn't want to know until the words actually came out, right? I didn't want to get those thoughts in my head.
What did they exactly tell you? Do you remember?
That's a good question. So we had another plant in another state, and we were kind of battling out, I guess, to see who was kind of better in a way. And I guess they kind of won. Uh, it was basically came down to where we weren't performing. We were just, the other ones further south. So our pay rate up here in the north is more expensive than what it is down there that they're paying people. So that was a factor. I don't know of anything else with customer wise, if their location was better than ours. I know we had a lot of local businesses around, not small businesses, but local corporations around us that we could, easily supply because they're, the chocolate field. As you know, Hershey is not, they're not too far from me. They're like 2 hours away. So easily print and send it on the way. I just remember that it was just a financial situation, and whoever was in there above us, like the CEO or whatever his position was, kind of got the things rolling. And then, he wasn't there for it anyways because he was, I think, let go. But yeah, so there's no way that you could have stopped it. And we were global, or I guess they still are global. So they had, places in Europe and everything too.
So do you remember how many people got let go in like one day? Like, was
I,
it?
I, I say 60. Like I could be low or it could be high, but I mean, there was a lot of people, and this was first, second, and there was 3 shifts. So just production wise, just running the machines and getting out the door, that's a lot of people. So I'm just saying 60, but I want to say we were 100 altogether on, with the office people on the floor, but the office people were still there for a little while longer, making sure their paperwork and stuff was done too.
I work for a newspaper company, and then one day, like I'm just a freelancer, but I just got a news that it got bought out, and 10 people got cut off. And these are like a senior editors and then reporters, and I just couldn't believe it. and then I didn't know like until a little bit later because my direct boss that I was dealing with was one of it, and then I didn't like get any like reply, and I was wondering why, and didn't like, really explain to me until like a little bit later. I think it was like so shocking. And then I recently saw like pink slip for like teachers,
Hmm.
um like 28 of them in one district,
Hmm.
just one day. Um it's really I've never had a corporate job, and I never had like the security kind of hey, this is your pension, this is your vacation time kind of job. But I can't imagine spending 20 years dedicating everything to this company and then suddenly you just don't have anything.
Right. So there is no security. That's basically what it's telling you. So that for me to go through that, I know that now for sure, experiencing it.
Now, do you remember your mental stage after you got a news? Like, did it like just wake you up like, oh my gosh? Or like, did it like take you a little bit while to sink in the magnitude?
Yeah, at first I want to say I was shocked. I was scared, not knowing what I would be doing. Obviously I'd be taking, I have to figure out how to take care of the kids, etc. Um, but then when I was asked to stay longer for the reasons of, because of my area and making sure everything was gone, it kind of prolonged that. So I really kind of like fought through that as I was still there cleaning up and taking care of everything else. Um, the only downside was to still be there that long and slowly see one person at a time go out the door because their position wasn't needed anymore. For people in the office or whatever. Uh, but yeah, so that's kind of how that worked for me. And then towards the end, I guess I was kind of like not really sure what I'm gonna do still, but I was more in a better state of mind. Like, I'll figure it out.
Well, again, I'm sorry. And this was what year? How many years ago was this?
About 4 years. It was 2020, so it was around 5 years, I guess it was.
Wow. And then obviously COVID hit and stuff.
Yeah. So COVID was involved too. Yeah.
So, how did you tell your family members, like, or friends about this news?
I don't remember telling too many friends. I do remember telling their mother, my wife at the time, and it was kind of rough because that's basically the income that was supporting us. I was basically working most of the time, through our whole lives together. Obviously, she was doing some stuff as well, but that was my job. Like that's what held us together to have the house we have and do the things we were doing. So I I don't remember everything. I do remember maybe saying something prior to it coming up, and like things might be shaky at work. And then when the news hit, then I, if I'm right, they sent us home early. And if it again, if I'm right, I think it was a Thursday, and then we had off the Friday to come back the following Monday. To kind of like everybody got their bearings straight and kind of relaxed a little bit because we were still working there after they told us. It was just like another 30 days or so for the at least the production team, anyways. And yeah, so I remember just leaving there, and yeah, I think I held out with a few of the guys going to do something just to kind of get the edge off a little bit because we were all shocked, right? And nobody wants to lose their job, not that way. They want to be prepared and say, "Hey, I'm done. I'm walking out the door."
Yeah, that's really tough. And then you mentioned about divorce, and then how long did it take from that job news to the divorce? It's like back to back or like a year apart or something?
It was close to a year, so it was May of 2020 that I was 2020. Yeah, hang on, I'm trying to think for you. Yeah, it was May of 2020 that I was done working. That I was one of the last three people to leave, and then it was within the same May, the following year, May of the following year, that the word divorce was mentioned to me. So a lot of things, were just changing at the house, which I didn't see coming. And feel free to ask me any questions on any of that stuff. But that it was in the same year, close to close to the whole year.
So, how was your reaction when you heard about the divorce?
Uh, when it got to that point, I was ready because I could not figure things out. There was a lot of behavior changes going on, and I didn't see it coming. So I feel like my trust was shattered. My heart was broken at the time because in my heart, I never wanted a divorce growing up. My father, his whole side, they all got divorced, and it was just always in me that, like, oh, this is never going to happen, right? Well, it happened. Didn't want it at the time, but everything happens for you, not to you, and that took a while for me to learn as well. So that's so when she said it to me, I was prepared. But prior to that, I was a wreck.
So, for people who are going through marriage and divorce and job loss, I think as a man, maybe it was harder to share like your true sorrow or like emotion. Do you remember how you were feeling? Maybe telling your immediate family member, do you remember like some words, maybe sad, shocked, and especially after the job loss? Do you recall those raw emotions? Like what was it like if you were to be able to explain or describe
After the job loss or the divorce?
after the divorce?
Oh, after the divorce.
After the divorce, yes.
Um, well, I think a lot of people probably knew it was coming, but not me. uh, so after the words were mentioned and we decided to go our ways, I did share that with my mother and my sister, and they were shocked, and then everybody else in her family was shocked, as far as I know. Right? I don't know who really knew it was going to come, without us sharing it thereafter, because we didn't tell the kids until, I guess, a month or two after the fact that we decided for whatever reason. But I didn't go around like spreading the news. I just sat in it, because I was trying to work on myself. I, I I was never that person to talk about my relationship up until the point of things were starting to happen and I couldn't figure things out. That's when I was starting to reach out to people that I never would have even spoken to before, strangers. You know what I mean?
So, first of all, I'm very sorry that this back to back losing a job and then getting divorced like happened so close to such a short period of time, and especially in the COVID as well. Um, when you talk about mental health, especially, I would say, I don't want to gender discriminate, but sometimes men have like I would say men get kind of like a harsh, um, kind of like a bias that you should be perfect and then you should be the head of household and then you know, get perfect composure and stuff. Did you feel that kind of pressure? Like, oh my gosh, um, the expectation that you had, and then the reality that hit? Like, no, is there any distortion? There's any like gap between that you can maybe explain as a man perspective?
Yeah, like we feel like we have to keep showing up, right? We want to provide and protect. And here's the one time I was not providing, and I was actually trying to figure myself out because and years after now, I feel like I'm a whole new person than what ever was before. And so maybe it had to happen for a reason, all of it. So then I would become who I'm supposed to be and not just be this person stuck in a mold, as I called it. Uh, but yeah, it got to a point where I was trying to learn new things, I was doing a commission based job thereafter instead of a 9 to 5. I started dabbling into creating stuff on YouTube to kind of share the education I was learning with others, and I started to enjoy that. And so it was new, and I'm just going to say I feel like there was a lack of communication going on, and I think if there was more of that communicating, then we could have figured things out. But yes, I've learned a lot, and I don't want to say I'm perfect in any way, but I do understand that when women are speaking, you guys probably tend to think that we understand you, even though you're just telling us a little bit, and we're like, okay, but you told me this, and so we're good, and that's usually not the case. So we have to dive deeper into let's communicate a little bit more, so I can understand exactly what you're trying to share to me, right? And and go back and forth, just so we're on the same page. Uh, what worked for me, if you don't mind, I'll just share. January, prior to the word divorce, I was listening to a podcast, and it's called Dad's Edge. It's all men based. Women listen to it too, I'm sure. But they have a program for men to join, and they can jump on all these Zoom calls with all these men, like a tribe, I guess you could call it. Talk about anything, with finances, relationships, whatever. So I was listening to this like 2, 3 years prior to that, just to try to be a better father. I just wanted to show up differently. And for whatever reason, this came up. I forget the episode, but then I remember hearing that they had this program. So I joined that, not knowing anything, not knowing even how far things would go in my relationship, but I was lost. Again, I didn't share my relationship with anybody around me whatsoever. Like I held that tight to be 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 between me and her. And since I couldn't figure things out and nobody was telling me, I felt like I had to reach out in another way. So I never jumped on those Zoom calls. I just felt like things weren't right at the house. So I just wanted to spend as much time as I could with the kids, not knowing where things were going. But I did connect with 4 to 5 men. Basically, I call it like a lifeline, right? So if you couldn't answer, if one of them couldn't answer, then you can text the other one, call the other one. And I got to, have a good relationship with these guys, whether they went through the same thing already or, they know other people or they're just there to listen. But they kind of had your back and just to be that, not that wall, but the wall that's actually going to reciprocate and say stuff back to you, right? Instead of you just being by yourself with your thoughts in your head. So that allowed me to grow and it gave me space to open up a little bit, right? So people can hear me and they understood me. Um, I going through trying to figure things out. I will share with you that, I lost 20 pounds. I couldn't sleep. Again, behaviors were changing. Late nights were happening, which never happened before. And so, and we had the 2 kids. So I was trying to figure things out. And thankfully, these guys were there to kind of get the stuff out of my head. And there's this one guy, I consider him like a coach because he does do this. Like he helps men hopefully save their marriages because they get lost, and 10 men commit suicide every day from divorce. Not that it's that day, but it's thereafter too, because we carry stuff with us all along the way. So thankfully, he was kind enough to Facebook message me back every once in a while. I would say something to him. One of the words he would share was just breathe, like just breathe. Know that you're alive. Everything's going to be okay, and don't look at all the small things, right? Don't take it because that's what we do. That's not just men, but that's what we all do. We look at every little thing, we take that all in, and we're like, "What's this? What? Why is this happening?" And usually it means nothing, but we just make a big deal out of it. Uh, he um, he wound up doing a masculinity course, and at the time I was like, "What? I don't know what this is. Feminine, masculine. I had no idea." So I jumped in it. It was me and another guy and him. It was 4 weeks, one day per week. We would connect for about an hour. Um, and this was like April, May, right before she said the word divorce. I was a wreck because things were just worse at home, and not it wasn't yelling or anything like that. It was just not no communication, no talking, and again, things were just different. Uh, and so like the third session, I was more composure and everything. I was listening, I was focused, and he said that he's like, you seem better, you sound better, you look better. And then the fourth time, was good enough too. And it was basically just I was able to learn how communication is with male and female, and some other things too that he shared as well. So it wasn't just like there to fix the marriage if it was possible, but it was there to carry out these lessons along the way thereafter. And I can see this all now when I talk to people. If you just sit back and just observe, you can see things. But I believe that podcast, those men, and going through his course led me to get to the point where I was okay. I was safe to say, okay, I'm done too. When she mentioned it, because I was just tired of fighting to keep it alive. And without that, I don't know. Maybe one day I could have been one of those 10 men. I have no idea. I can't say I was thinking that, but I understand completely what men think because they built this all up, right? So in a sense, I kind of built an empire in a way with the house, the family, and everything, and shattered. The work went, divorce went, and now I get my kids every 7 days. Like, who wants that? So now I can't. Now I see them half their life pretty much growing up now. So that part sucks. Um, and that's something we have to carry out too. And some men don't even get to see their kids, for whatever reason. So that's kind of like how it worked for me and got me prepared in a way. And I hope that works for a lot of people, but I can't say it does because we're all scared. We're as men, we hold things in, right? Your back starts aching and stuff because of all the stress and everything. You're holding it in, and unfortunately, hopefully you don't get to the point where you have that fist of rage because you hold all this stuff in. You have to let it out, and that's why I think talking to some men, whether it's something like I did or just reaching out to me or whatever through this podcast, and we just have a talk, and like, this is life. Like, we'll go through it, but we'll get better and become better on the other side of it.
So, John, let me ask you something. So, I grew up in Japan, where men are absolute superior than female. We don't have much rights. So, men kind of rules, and then we just have to follow them. That's just a cultural thing. But in America, I feel like equal, not as maybe good as maybe Iceland, which is like number one in gender gap for the past 9 years. But in America, it's definitely much, much better than Japan. But then I don't know how I can see it in favoritism ways that say me girl can get away with some of the stuff, the men, the boys cannot get away with certain stuff even at school level. And then, I understand like, mainly like those words that like camouflage all this pain and suffering that you guys carry as same human as female, that men sometimes are not allowed to express as much pain or cry, you know crazy like women. And the women, I feel like we can get away with shedding tears, but men, I feel like if you shed a tear at work, people would like not think you are accountable, or maybe he cannot hold a position well. So then a lot of times, sadly, I see successful men, commit suicide or just break down and have a complete meltdown. They can't get out to the other side. But I feel like it's a cultural stuff too. School, I see it a lot too. How would you describe to audience about maybe what I observed?
Jerry, I completely agree. I really do. Um, we as men have all this pressure to provide and protect, right? And I understand that there's a lot of the feminist uh, movement that's happening where women are, they don't need a man, they're working, they got all this money and stuff, and money isn't everything, but a lot of people make it crack up to be like that is like number one. Uh, as far as like the men sharing their emotions, like that's real. That's got to happen, and I know that women don't want to see it sometimes because they think he's weak, but and what I watch, what I listen to, and the guys I've been around, like that makes you stronger. That makes you show up as an individual and who you really are and get that out, and then it's got to be, I believe it's got to be the woman that can receive that and say that you're a strong man, like sharing that. And then let's get back on the horse and we can ride this together and do great things. Like that's what it should be. It should be a partnership and going in the battle together and not fighting for it. And one over the other is more dominant in the relationship. Um, I see a lot more men opening up on my side than ever before. It could be just the people I'm around as well, but I see it. And so I do believe that sometime, I don't know how many years, things will eventually probably shift back to how it was a little bit. Um, but that's going to take some time. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and with me having the son, I'm hopefully trying to prepare him for that, like to be ready and just be yourself, and share your thoughts and your feelings, and even if you don't cry, just let's just talk about it, right? So you got to let it out, and this is life. You can't hold it all in. We all don't know the answers if we hold it in.
It is very hard topic. Um, it's a challenge. I feel the bias in racism, for instance, um, are really loud and clear, and it's very like studied, important, expected. So, for instance, if I hear like word jab or like can you speak English or chin chin ding dong to my face, like it just kind of like expected because it's like bias based my race. But then the bias based towards men are like this. They they are strong, they provide, they don't break, and they show up, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't meet that quality that the society or even like female in-laws, like whoever expect, but then you are as fragile as other side, like you are absolutely allowed to cry, you're absolutely eloquently state that you're scared.
Mhm.
But I feel, I don't know how a media, a dream life, like I have no idea how men get so much pressure. I have a friend who published a book called Rich White Man, Garrett Newman, and then he even said he teaches at Harvard Kennedy School, went to Stanford, had a very successful career. But even during the COVID, that he said he had that white man pressure that you expected to provide and then have a great house, expensive living lifestyle. But he really went through a dark time that he couldn't share because
Mhm.
he had like a social status like expectation. So he said it was very hard.
It is hard. Yeah, and that's why. I don't know if he had anybody he could share, like as a man or a friend or something like that, but um, that's what we need right now, and that's why I see these communities growing, and all these, like there's an event I guess with all these I think it's one for married men, but they're all coming together to build themselves up because life brings you down when you're by yourself. So join these communities, listen to these podcasts, and just find a community and a home where you can listen to something and take some stuff differently. Like, and when I say that, I mean, don't bring all the negative stuff to you. Be more positive, optimistic, and think of good things to come. Even when you have the tough times, I still deal with tough times, and like I'm past the relationship part, but I still deal with stuff thereafter, right? So I have to, this just because the divorce happened 4 or 5 years ago, there's ripple effect, right? I still have to deal with stuff, and there's a lot of, I guess on the bright side, I do see my kids, right? There's a lot of men on the other side that don't see their kids for whatever reason, and that sucks, because that's what they live for, and I'm sure a lot of them do commit suicide because they don't see their kids. They don't. Those kids don't know their father. They don't know how great of a man he was and still is, because maybe they're told different. I don't know, but yeah, it's hard taking that pressure on to say if you want to keep up with the Joneses in a way, right? That have all these flashy items and whatnot. And that's not what life is about, but that's what society makes us think. That's what the neighbors make us think. And that's really not what it's about. To me, right now, it's about just living and being happy and having a good time. And hopefully you can help people along the way. That's why I say, find the communities and stuff and surround yourself with good people.
Thank you so much, John. So, why don't we shift to the next question, which is the tools that you use to overcome? So, this is my favorite part of the podcast because of all the 156 guests that I've had. Sometimes the adversity happens and people always say, hey, do you have a therapist? Go get a therapist, or like, no, do this, do that. But sometimes it doesn't work, and sometimes you're lost. So this podcast really provided us unique tools that people actually used that worked. So John, can you please tell us what really truly worked for you to overcome your adversity?
Yeah. So thank you. As you know, the guys and stuff I surrounded myself with to get through the divorce part up to the word. Thereafter, I had to work on myself, and I call it the 5 areas, right? So I worked on myself mentally and emotionally first, right? I had to prepare myself mentally. Like, hey, I'm going to be by myself for a while here. How am I going to do this? I got 2 kids I got to take care of with a house still, and somebody, is going to be moving out or whatever. So, like, how do I do this? So, for me, I first developed a morning routine, and it's shifted a little bit since then, but I still carry one today. So, uh, I will get up and I will say thank you to God for another beautiful day. Like, that's my thing, right? Because I get to wake up and I get to breathe and just live life again. A lot of people don't wake up, so you got to be thankful for it. I'll do that, get my coffee. I'll sit down. I'll watch a YouTube video with motivation and stuff for about 10 minutes. And then I'll meditate for 10 minutes. And then I'll write 3 things I'm grateful for. And that could be anything: the sun, the car, if it came out to be something like that, because it gets you from A to B, whatever. It's just 3 things every day, trying to shift your mindset and think positive and have, know that not everything is bad. Uh, and just to remember that everything you have now, you once wanted before. So, you should be grateful for getting to where you are today. And plus, other people would rather be in your footsteps than where they are today. So, even though you might have it hard, somebody else has it harder. Uh, and then right now, I do pray, and then I would prepare and get the rest of the day going. But that's what I was working on first. My morning routine, get my head straight, ready for the day, and then I worked on myself physically. So that's a little story in itself because I have like a whole gym set in the basement I had for years, never really touched it. Now I have time, right? So it's like, okay, I get to spend some time down here, and so I did that for about 5 days a week for probably a year. I got some results, but I wasn't getting the results I wanted. So I did wind up hiring a fitness trainer and dove into his program for about 6 months, which changed things for sure. So I've learned to hire coaches and mentors, and yes, there's a cost to it, but it's a cost that will get you further in life to where you want to go because they already been there. So, for example, if somebody's going to go through a divorce and they want to talk to me, like I've been there, you know what I mean? So I can kind of share my experience in that sense. Uh, Thereafter, I worked on myself spiritually. So I used to start saying thank you every day just for waking up. And then for whatever reason, I woke up one day and said, thank you, God. And I had no idea where it came from. I don't know. Uh, it's been probably about 2 years now, 2 or 3 years. And so I reached out to a friend of mine that lives around the corner, goes to a church. He's like, maybe you're just curious, whatever, recommended Bible. So I just dove into it a little bit, started going to church. Yeah, I don't know everything, but I do believe there's something greater and higher than us. And plus, it releases a lot of the stress and everything on ourselves somewhere else, right? And know that somebody else is guiding us, and whatever you believe in. So that opened my eyes up spiritually, and just to know that I'm not alone and everything's going to be okay. Relationship wise is another area. And basically for me, it's just, like I said, mentors, coaches, friends. I started the podcast, so I've been networking with all these people, great people I had for interviews and connecting with them. And man, what a ride's this been. I mean, if it wasn't for me having Jill on, I wouldn't have connected with you. And that's how I got your information. So that's been a learning lesson for growth as well. So relationships, talking, communicating, trying to do this back and forth and having these deep conversations. And then for me, the last one is the business and finance, like it, and that I'm working on, and I'm still working on everything else too. But I kind of got to a point where I feel like I can hold it for a little bit. I can tweak it. I can make it better. Uh, but I left the business finance last because I don't think I would have gotten to where I am today if I didn't do the other stuff first. That was how I set it all up. I don't know if that's for everybody, but that if I'm okay in my head and in my heart, then I feel like I'm okay everywhere else, even though things are bad sometimes. So that's a little bit in a nutshell, I guess, of how I traveled down that road and navigating through after post divorce.
Well, thank you so much. I really like the morning routine, and then like you are like saying like the being grateful and stuff.
Mhm.
So, out of all this talk that you had internally and everything, that what are some of the um discovery that you could maybe share with our audience? Like say, um before losing your job for 20 years and then getting divorced, maybe you did have this expectation and certainty and security that got broken, and you did this affirmation for a while, and then like self-discovery, like what would you say some of the tools that really helped you to get some of the new perspective of life?
Yeah, so I'll have to go back to that coach at least to start. Like he mentioned, breathe. I believe he mentioned, what it happens to for you, not to you, and look at everything as an opportunity, right? So like those are the three big things I can think of at the moment that was like life changing. Now he said it, other people said it, videos say it, and it takes time for things to sink in. So for me, it's like after you hear it the third time, you're like, what is this? Right? Does this make sense? And so you have to learn to accept things after a while. And if I didn't look at it that way and say, why is this always happening to me? Then I'd be beating myself up. I could be depressed and not doing anything. And unfortunately, a lot of people do that. They just get stuck. Uh, yeah. So like after that, obviously the motivation stuff I'll still listen to today. I'll listen to podcasts today. All these different, yeah, I I know, right? All these different avenues of bringing in some kind of uh, positive information that is going to make you grow. You want to keep growing. You don't want to die. And I mean inside, right? You don't want to die inside as a person because, it- again, you're just going to sit there and watch TV and just be in this shell. And, you know, Jerry, you're more than Jerry. You got to get up and do something. You're not going to just sit there. So you got to just surround yourself with the right people too. Like at that, I know I mentioned the podcast, but even these live events I've been to, these masterminds like I never would have done. I went to Florida in a house with like 30 other people I never would have been, to meet, and surround yourself for a couple of days with these same people that just want to keep growing, grow their business, grow as a person, grow other people. It's enlightening. It's a big game changer to be around people like that. It definitely can change your mindset for sure. Now, you are learning, you're growing, and so things might not happen right away as fast as you might want things to happen. But as things take time. So you wouldn't be on episode 150 something or whatever now, if you didn't stay consistent, keep showing up, right? So things take time, and I know that too. So whatever I want to come in my life is going to happen when the timing is right. So we have to learn to accept that. And I was able to learn that too. Like it's a good thing I'm mentioning time. Time does heal, right? You can heal with time. And so, it's been a while since I went through this divorce. I'm healed from all of that, as far as the relationship goes. And so like that's okay. That's what is allowing me to go to these events still and reach out to different people and just be me. Like I feel like I'm me. I don't feel like I was looking back. I don't feel like I was supposed to be where I was supposed to be at the time.
Well, thank you so much again. And then really shedding a light to this difficult issues that um, you have certain expectation. And I feel like American media sometimes sings like a little bit too loud for a perfect American dream life. That what if you fail and you don't talk about that, right? Like, what if the media tells, "Hey, this is American dream life, but what this is a uh unexpected that happened, but this is how you overcome." That kind of model is not like there as an example, and nothing to anchor on or exemplify um these things that it's really hard. So I really appreciate you coming on today and then shedding a light about this topic. And I know it's not easy to talk about it, but you're being brave and then really sharing, and I'm sure people appreciate it. Now let's move on to the last question. Uh, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Anyways, um, I have some live comment that I just want to read. Um, he said, "Being stuck is something I know all too well." That's what he said. And then I feel a lot of us feel stuck because we can't do anything to change the situation sometimes. So
Yes.
some of the live comments coming in.
Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yes, absolutely. So John, my last question is, what were the things that you learned, and then what was a gift that came from your adversity?
Hmm. What was a gift? The gift is doing this podcasting. It's changed my life completely upside down 10 times over and over again. Um, that's what I'm so glad I jumped into. I went to a live event and I sat at a breakfast table with the guy that was running it. There was maybe 7 of us. Everybody left but this one guy. I can't remember his name. I wish I did. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. Start a podcast. So like I really didn't know. So at the time, I had 10 Facebook lives on entrepreneurship because I was trying to do life insurance was the commission based job I was doing, and so I was trying to get entrepreneurs and talk to them. And so he's like, "Oh, just take that, strip the audio." I'm like, in my head, I'm like, "Okay, but it's not what my podcast is going to be. That's not what I want to do." I sat on it for 6 months, and then I went ahead and did it, and then I launched the podcast, and it's what it is now today. Ever since, but I hesitated for 6 months, and I'm glad I did do it. But there was probably a reason too I hesitated as well, because maybe the timing wasn't right either. I wasn't prepared. I was stuck in another area in my head, thinking I couldn't do anything. But this is the gift. It's allowed me to speak on stages. It's allowed me to get in a couple books. I'll be going to Dallas to speak in May, and so it's a life changing thing for me, helping others with the podcast. But more importantly, like for instance, if you were on my podcast, which I'll have to get you on, and so that you could share your journey and it can go out to whoever can hear it and watch it and hopefully change their life, if they're stuck in a way. And if not, then, pass it along to a friend that needs to hear it or watch it. Like this has been the gift. I'm able to have a voice and share it to the world, and if they like it, great. If they don't, then okay. I don't have to worry about, don't take things personally anymore. That's another thing too. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. A bonus question.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody is going through what you went through right now, listening to this podcast, what will be the biggest advice?
You're not alone, then to reach out to somebody. I really do. And again, if it's something I shared already and I experienced it and you want to reach out to me, feel free. And if I'm not that person, maybe I can find somebody. I had plenty of guests on my podcast. I'm sure somebody's going to know somebody if it's not them either. Right. And it's all about networking. So I'm here to help in any way. But yeah, if you're stuck in your head, try to reach out to somebody. And I shared with you, I believe it's strangers that can help you the most sometimes.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much again. And then thank you to our audience for joining this episode. And then we have more guests coming in. So stay tuned and have a wonderful evening. Thank you.